You want to know why we lost the war? The battle-worn Kerr veteran clicked his mandibles in frustration as he sipped his drink. I'll tell you, we never had a real chance. Not against them. The young reporter leaned in, her antennae twitching with curiosity. She'd heard whispers about the terrifying war with humans, but no one ever talked openly. Most soldiers avoided the memories. Still, she tried, but the Empire had stronger weapons, more advanced tech. He laughed, a dry, rattling sound. You think that matters? Let me explain something about humans and war. You think you've seen violence? You haven't. He took another deep gulp, the bar's dim light flickering in his compound eyes. While we were mastering plasma rifles and energy shields, they were mastering one thing: how to kill, and not with high-tech tools. With knives, fire, traps, explosives, anything they could build with their hands. While we optimized, they improvised. That's so primitive, the journalist muttered. The veteran slammed his drink down hard. Primitive. You want to know what they did during our first battle? We showed up with perfect battle lines, flawless formations, designed by our smartest war ayers. You know what the humans did? They laughed. Then they started throwing rocks. No joke, tungsten rods from orbit. Ever seen a metal pole hit the ground at terminal velocity? They called it rods from God. No warning, no radiation, just destruction falling from the sky. The reporter looked stunned, her antennae drooping. But we had more soldiers. He barked another dry laugh. We thought that would matter, 10-1. That's how badly we outnumbered them. But humans, they thrive when they're outnumbered. They actually prefer it. Makes the fight more interesting for them. But simulations aren't real combat, she argued. And yet they prepared their whole lives. Their kids grow up playing war for fun. Laser tag, paintball, capture the flag. They learn teamwork, ambush tactics, flanking all before they're even trained. He leaned in close now, his voice barely above a whisper. But the worst part, the part that still keeps me awake, it's not their weapons. It's not their numbers, it's their creativity. We planned everything by the book. Humans, they rewrite the book, mid-battle. She blinked, unsure. What do you mean? Battle of Imus Antari, he said slowly. We had them boxed in. More ships, better firepower. It was over, but they overloaded their own antimatter cores. Blew out every system, theirs and ours. Then, in the pitch-black silence of dead ships, they boarded us hand to hand. No one saw it coming. That's how they fight. Not like soldiers. Like predators. They used chemical rockets, he said, visibly trembling. Do you have any idea what it feels like to sit in a state-of-the-art warship to Refugee Attack from across the galaxy and watch a bunch of humans in clunky metal suits burn through your hull with hot metal? Just thermal lances, superheated rods of metal, primitive, crude, effective. And while they tore through the walls of our ship, they were singing, I swear on my ancestors they were singing. Some ancient song called Blood Upon the Risers. It was about soldiers falling to their deaths when parachutes failed. Wait, ... Not lasers, not plasma cutters, the journalist asked, confused. No, the veteran growled on about death, and they sang it to lift their spirits. He stared into his drink, eyes distant. What kind of species does that? The journalist's mandibles twitched. But surely, with such outdated tech, that's where everyone makes the mistake, he snapped. We saw their tech as weak. They saw it as flexible. To them, technology isn't sacred, it's just a means to an end. They'll use energy rifles 1 minute and old-school bullets the next. Quantum AI and mechanical switches side by side. It doesn't matter to them. All that matters is results. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. You know what finally made me understand what we were dealing with? Their language, one of their sayings. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I had to ask what it meant. Turns out it's just a metaphor for problem solving. But really think about that. How casual they are with the idea of tearing the skin off an animal as a symbol for clever thinking. That's the mindset we were up against. But we had better ships. The journalist tried again. He laughed, bitter and low. Better looking, sure. Sleek, efficient, symmetrical. The humans, they strapped massive engines onto hunks of reinforced metal. No elegance, just tanks in space. Ugly, overbuilt, and nearly impossible to destroy. Their smaller ships didn't even have proper shields, just armor. Thick slabs of it. As if they expected to get hit and planned to just power through. He emptied his glass and stared into it. And their weapons gods. We thought we'd impress them with energy beams and plasma arrays, but they brought everything. Lasers, bullets, railguns, chemical gas, biological agents. If it could cause pain, they turned it into a weapon. The journalist shifted uncomfortably. But surely there were limits. He smiled darkly. Oh, there were no limits. They weaponized ideas, used stories, lies, even jokes as tools of war. They studied us, our beliefs, fears, cultures, and used them against us. Spread rumors that they could smell fear. Said if you resisted, they'd make it hurt more. Some of our soldiers surrendered without a fight, not because they were beaten, but because they were afraid of a story. The journalist's antennae twitched wildly. That's insane. Exactly, he whispered, but it worked. That's what you have to understand. With humans, it's never about tradition or pride. It's about winning, no matter how messy, how strange, or how cruel the method is. If it works, they'll use it. He set the empty glass down slowly. And if you really want to know the truth about why we lost, you want to know the real reason humans can't be beaten in war. The old veteran leaned in, voice low. It's simple. They enjoy it. Wait, what? The journalist blinked. Not the killing. Not the blood knot. Most of them anyway. They're the ones who do enjoy that. You never want to meet them. No, what they love is the challenge, the strategy, the tactics. To them, war isn't horror, it's a puzzle, a game, and they are brilliant at solving it. He waved at the bartender for another drink. You know what they did after we surrendered? He asked, half laughing in disbelief. They invited our top surviving officers to play paintball, said it would help build post-war trust. So there we were, what was left of our command, getting pelted with colored balls by humans laughing like it was some holiday game. That's disturbing, the journalist murmured. Disturbing, he scoffed. That word doesn't even scratch the surface. He leaned back, compound eyes staring through the station's viewport, stars twinkling beyond. You know what their civilians were doing during the war? Building model replicas of our ships for fun, simulating battles in video games, writing stories about how the war might have gone differently. Their whole society, top to bottom, was thinking about conflict, analyzing it, enjoying it. He let out a slow breath. So why did we lose? Because we sent soldiers. They sent warriors. We fought with science. They fought with art. We fought because we were ordered to. They fought because they'd spent their whole lives dreaming about it, waiting for the chance. The journalist sat in silence, trying to process it all. Then she asked quietly, do you think they'll ever change? Become more civilized? The veteran gave a dark, chittering laugh. Oh, they are civilized. That's what makes them so dangerous. He nodded toward a group of humans at the far end of the bar, arm wrestling, placing bets, laughing like children. Look at them now, just having fun. Friendly competition. But I've seen what happens when someone threatens what they care about. Their homes, their people, their freedom. His voice dropped. When that line is crossed, they stop being civilized real fast. And then you see the truth. The journalist leaned in. What truth? That humans don't just fight wars, they live for them. They don't just study violence, they master it. They don't fear the battlefield, they turn it into a stage. He finished his drink and stood slowly, mandibles clicking. They are the gods of war. And the rest of us, we're just playing with sticks while they compose symphonies of destruction. He took a final glance back and added, so next time someone laughs at humans for still using bullets, or mocks them for loving combat sports, or calls them primitive for keeping armies, remember this, every old tool they hold on to, they kept it because it works, and they know how to use it better than anyone in the galaxy ever will. Never forget this, the veteran said, pausing at the door. All those outdated military customs humans cling to, they've been sharpened by thousands of years of endless war. He glanced back one last time, and their so-called uncivilized obsession with competition. That's what drives them to keep pushing forward, to evolve, to win. He turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and one more thing. He leaned slightly toward the journalist, his voice low and grave. If you ever find yourself in a fight with a human, surrender. Right away. Because if you don't, they'll study your weapon, figure out how it works, make it better and then use it against you, and they'll probably be humming a cheerful song while doing it. With that, he gave one final chittering laugh and disappeared into the corridor, leaving the young journalist alone, her mind racing with what she'd just heard. At the far end of the bar, the humans had started singing again, something about a grand old duke and his 10,000 men. The journalist suddenly felt she didn't want to know the rest of the lyrics. Some things, she decided, were better left unexplored. Just as she was about to leave, a human from the singing group approached the counter beside her. He wore what looked like a formal military uniform, though to her refined Kacker sensibilities, the excessive display of ribbons and medals seemed almost tacky. Couldn't help overhearing your conversation, he said casually, ordering something called whiskey. Your friend wasn't wrong, but he missed the best part. The journalist tilted her head. Best part, he grinned, showing teeth, a gesture that would be a threat in most species. For humans it meant amusement, and somehow that was even more unsettling yet, he said, sitting down beside her. See, your veteran buddy. He saw us during wartime. That's like watching the end of a play without seeing any of the rehearsals. She instinctively leaned back a little, unsettled by his relaxed confidence. Did you fight in the war? She asked. Nah, he replied with a chuckle. I was just a kid, but we all studied it. It's part of basic education now. How not to start an interstellar war. 101, he smirked. Though really, it should be called how to end one fast if someone else starts it. He motioned to the stars outside the window. You know what most species see out there? Resources, power, strategy. His eyes gleamed. You know what we see? Stories. Every sci-fi battle we've ever written, every desperate last stand, every brilliant plan, every impossible victory we've imagined since we first looked up at the sky. His voice lowered, eyes fixed on the stars. But do you want to know the real twist? The thing that truly makes us dangerous? She nodded slowly. It's that we don't actually want to fight. He turned to look at her, suddenly serious. Yes, we train for war constantly. But our greatest heroes, they're not the ones who win the battles. They're the ones who stop them from ever starting. The generals who win without firing, the diplomats who talk us back from the edge. The leaders who keep the peace. He finished his drink and set the glass down gently. That's what makes us the true gods of war. We understand war so deeply that we know when not to use it. He stood up, nodded politely, and walked away, leaving the journalist in silence, staring out at the stars. And for the first time, she truly understood it wasn't their weapons. It wasn't their numbers. It wasn't even their technology. It was their mindset. Humans don't just fight wars. They master them, then choose not to fight. And that made them the most terrifying warriors in the galaxy. But he missed the most important part, the human officer said, rising from his stool and straightening his uniform. Like any true artist, we know that sometimes the greatest act is choosing not to create at all. He looked around the bar. That's why we're here now, sharing drinks instead of firing weapons across the void. Because as skilled as we are at war, we're even better at finding ways to avoid it. He smiled again. This time the journalist didn't flinch at the flash of teeth. Just remember, he said softly, the only thing humans love more than a good fight is a good reason not to have one. With that, he returned to his group, who were now laughing and attempting to sing something about 99 bottles of beer on a wall. The journalist glanced down at her notes, then looked up at the stars. And suddenly, she understood. Humans weren't called the gods of war because they were the best at fighting. They earned that title because they understood better than anyone why not to fight. She had her story, but it wasn't the one she came here to write. Behind her, the humans had started singing again, something about a buffalo soldier in the heart of America. She smiled faintly and decided that some songs, like some species, were best appreciated from a safe distance, preferably behind several layers of reinforced armor. Just in case. Then something changed. The singing stopped. The bar's mood shifted like a sudden storm. A vidscreen flickered to life. Breaking news. Pirates had attacked a civilian transport near the Carina Nebula. But not just any ship. This one was carrying children. Refugees from the still-burning Real sector. Every human in the bar froze. Smiles vanished. Laughter died. Casual chatter turned to silence. The journalist felt something primal chill deep in her thorax. This was what the veteran had tried to warn her about. A new human approached her. Female. She wore civilian clothes but moved like a soldier. She sat without asking. You want to know, the woman said quietly, why we're really called the gods of war? The journalist nodded. The woman's eyes flicked toward the screen. Watch what happens next. What do you mean? Those pirates, the woman said, her voice cold, just made the biggest mistake of their lives. You have rules for warfare. The woman gave a sharp laugh, nothing like the light-hearted tones from before. It sounded like ice cracking. We have rules for everything, she said. Codes of conduct, laws of war, Geneva Conventions, rules of engagement, but some rules, she pointed at the screen, where the news ticker scrolled grimly, double quotes, ... Some rules are written in our DNA. The journalist watched, stunned, as the humans in the bar sprang into action. Phones were out, messages were being sent, voices low, sharp, efficient. Plans were formed. The woman leaned in. Most species think we're dangerous because we're good at fighting, she said. But that's not it. Her expression darkened. We're dangerous because there are lines that should never be crossed, and when someone does, she stood, her voice turning to steel. We make sure they never do it again. Those lines, the woman said, and smiled. Suddenly, the journalist understood why many species viewed human smiles as threat displays. There was something in that expression to calm, to show, that felt more like a warning than a gesture of kindness. The veteran you spoke to, the woman continued, he saw us in a normal war. The officer, he knows our history, our preparation, our potential. But neither of them showed you what happens when we're truly angry. On the screen, real-time reports began flashing in. Naval vessels were altering course, dozens of them all heading toward the Carina Nebula. And not just human ships. Vessels from every major power in the sector. The journalist's antennae twitched in shock. Alliances. She whispered, another thing we're good at. The woman replied, when humanity goes to war, we don't go alone. We bring friends, allies, partners, because we learned long ago that strength isn't measured by firepower alone. It's measured by how many people will stand beside you when things go dark. She pointed at the screen. Every nation that signed the Terran Accords is mobilizing, not because they have to, but because they know we never forget who stands with us. But it's just pirates, the journalist said softly. Just pirates. The woman's voice turned cold. They attacked children, refugees, the defenseless. Do you know what that means in human terms? The journalist shook her head. It means the rules just changed. She nodded toward the screen, where more ships continued to arrive. In regular war, we follow laws, ethics, rules of engagement, but when someone targets the innocent, especially children, that's when you see why we're called the gods of war. Just then, the human officer from earlier returned to the table, his face grim. Task forces are assembled. Reports are coming in from 3 other sectors. Looks like someone's been watching these pirates for a long time. Of course they have, the woman said quietly. We never forgot. The journalist's professional instinct kicked in. Never forgot what? The two humans exchanged a look. The officer spoke first. 3 years ago, these same pirates hit another refugee transport. We couldn't prove it, but we knew, so we waited. Gathered intel. Built networks, made friends, and now, the journalist asked, the woman's smile returned cold. Calm and final. Now they've given us a reason, a moral justification. That's when humans are most dangerous, when we can act with full moral clarity. The screen lit up with the first reports of engagement. Ships from a dozen species were moving as one, blockading escape routes, surrounding pirate vessels, executing synchronized maneuvers with terrifying precision. The journalist stared, wide-eyed. How are they coordinating like this? Different languages, different systems. How? Because we trained them, the officer said, pride in his voice. After the war, we shared what we knew: tactics, strategy, crisis coordination. Not everything, of course, we're not stupid, but we gave them enough, and we earned their trust, the woman added. And trust, my friend, is more powerful than any battleship. The journalist watched as the pirates' escape routes vanished one by one. Their ships, once scattered and bold, were now trapped, isolated, outmatched, and surrounded. Within hours, the threat was gone, not just defeated, erased. The last pirate ship was cornered. The refugee vessel was safe. The journalist leaned forward. Wait, are they offering the pirates a chance to surrender? Of course they are, the woman said. That's rule 1 in human warfare. Always offer a chance to surrender. Always give your enemy an out. But why? Isn't the goal to destroy your enemy? The officer shook his head. No, the goal is to make sure they never want to fight you again. And sometimes, the best way to do that is to show mercy when you have every reason not to. On the screen, most pirate ships powered down. Some tried to run, a few fought back. None escaped. The journalist stared, stunned. And that, the woman said, standing up, is why we're called the gods of war. Not because we're the strongest. Not because we're the most advanced. Not because we're the most brutal. She straightened her jacket suddenly. The journalist understood that was military. You're an admiral, the journalist said quietly. The woman nodded once. One last lesson about humans and war, she said. We're not just good at fighting wars, we're good at ending them. Sometimes with violence, sometimes with mercy. Sometimes with both, but always with purpose. The officer beside her nodded in agreement. The pirates thought they could get away with it because they misunderstood us. They thought our singing, our laughter, our games meant we weren't serious. They thought we were soft. They forgot, the admiral said, her voice cold, that gods can be both merciful and terrible. And humanity. She smiled faintly. We've had a lot of practice at being both. The journalist turned back to the screen. The Allied fleet was escorting the captured pirate ships toward the nearest starbase. The refugee vessel was surrounded by medical ships from 3 different species. What she had witnessed was more than victory. It was a message. Humanity didn't dominate with numbers or with overwhelming tech or even superior strategy. They dominated through something far more powerful. The ability to bring others together, to fight with both fury and restraint, to turn potential enemies into lifelong allies. The bars, singing resumed, but it was different now. No rowdy chants or playful songs. This time, the humans sang something old, something deep, a song about amazing grace and how sweet the sound. The journalist had heard humans sing all night, but this was the first time she truly understood why. Even gods sometimes need to remind themselves of mercy. The pirate incident had drawn a crowd to the station's bar. Among them, the journalist noticed a small group of young alien students. By their markings, gathered around an elderly human. His uniform was ceremonial, aged with time. Old medals glinted faintly under the lights, each one a silent story from battles long past. One of the students stepped forward. Is it true, they asked, about the great memorial? The old man's eyes crinkled with memory. He looked out the window, toward the stars. You're wondering how we remember our wars, the old man said, catching the journalist's gaze. She stepped closer, datapad in hand, drawn in. This was something she hadn't thought about, how humans preserved their military past. On Earth, the veteran began. There's a wall, just a wall made of polished black stone. It reflects your face when you look at it. But more importantly, it reflects names. Names, one of the alien students asked. Thousands of them, the old man said softly. People go there to touch them, to trace them on paper, to leave flowers, medals, even letters. But why? A young sentinel asked. Why remember the dead like that? Because every name tells a story, the old human said. Every single one. He looked around the quiet room. We don't just honor our victories, we remember our losses, too, our mistakes, our failures. That's part of what makes us different. Just then, the admiral from earlier walked in and sat beside him. The veteran gave her a respectful nod before continuing. Most species build statues for their heroes, memorials for their greatest battles. We do that, sure, but he took a slow sip of his drink. We also build monuments to our failures, to the cost of war. Another student tilted his head. But why remember defeat? Wouldn't that weaken morale? That's exactly why, the admiral cut in. Because remembering is how we make sure it doesn't happen again. She leaned forward slightly. Every name on that wall, it's a lesson, written in blood. The old man nodded in agreement. We have a saying, he said quietly. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. But for us, memory isn't just numbers or history books. It's personal, it's stories, feelings, bonds. He pulled a small metal tag from his pocket, hanging on a chain. This belonged to my grandfather, he said. He fought in a war we call World War II, one of millions. When I was a kid, he didn't tell me about victories. He told me about losses, the friends he didn't come home with, the nightmares he couldn't shake. One student frowned. That seems counterproductive. Wouldn't it discourage your warriors? The Admiral chuckled softly. You'd think so, but no, it does the opposite. She looked at the screen, still playing footage from the battle. When we go to war, she said, we don't just bring weapons, we carry memories, lessons bought with blood and fire. The old man added, every human warrior carries more than just gear. They carry the weight of those who came before them, their courage, their pain, their failures, their sacrifice. The journalist's antenna twitched, fascinated. Is that why humans fight differently from other species? She asked. In part, yes, the Admiral replied. Most species see war as a tool, a tactic, a necessity. She looked directly at the journalist. We see war as a story. One we've been writing since the first human picked up a stone to protect their tribe. And we're still writing it, the old man said. Still adding chapters, still learning, still remembering. One of the students gestured at the screen. Is that why everyone responded so fast to the refugee attack? Exactly, the Admiral said without hesitation. When we saw that helpless ship under fire, we didn't just see a moment. We saw every war, every sacrifice, every name, and we remembered. We didn't just see a pirate attack, the veteran said quietly. We saw every refugee ship that's ever been hunted, every innocent life ever targeted. Every time someone thought the weak could be easy prey, we remembered. The Admiral leaned in. But we don't just remember pain. We remember every moment someone stood up, every time strangers united to protect the helpless, every time mercy was shown even when revenge would have been easier. The old soldier gently held up a pair of worn dog tags. These were my grandfather's. He didn't fight for glory. He fought because he knew what happens when good people do nothing. That's why we train so hard, why we prepare, why we share what we know, because we've seen what happens when we're too late. The journalist glanced at her notes, then looked around. So humans are seen as the gods of war, she said slowly, not just for how you fight, but because you never forget why. The veteran nodded. Exactly. We carry every story, every loss, every victory, every mistake with us. That's our strength. The Admiral stood, adjusting her civilian coat. Her voice was calm, but carried steel beneath it. That's why the pirates never had a chance. Not because we had better weapons or bigger ships, but because each of us came carrying the memory of every time someone innocent was hurt, and every time mercy was offered to those who didn't deserve it. A student asked quietly, so it's also about remembering? Yes, the veteran said. Because we know what happens when justice turns to cruelty. When victory blinds you. If we forget, we become the very monsters we fight. The screen behind them showed the last pirate ship being taken into custody. The refugee vessel was safe now, surrounded by medical ships from several species. That's what being gods of war really means, the veteran said. It's not about loving war. It's about knowing when to fight and when not to. It's about remembering the cost. The Admiral nodded. Every battle winter we bring with us the weight of our past, our failures, our sacrifices, our lessons. That's what makes us more dangerous in war, and more merciful in peace. The room went still. No one spoke. Even the journalist had stopped writing behind them. The humans at the bar had started singing again, but this time it wasn't a rowdy tune. It was slow, full of sorrow, a song about poppies blooming where fallen soldiers once lay. And in that moment, the journalist finally understood humans weren't feared because they loved war. They were feared because they never forgot what it cost.